Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Look, today we are tackling something absolutely crucial for any science educator. And honestly, it's sort of the ultimate tool for bridging the gap between classroom science and the real world. We're talking about Texas Science Competency's 005C. Because as educators, our goal isn't just to talk at a whiteboard for an hour, it's to spark genuine, lasting understanding. Let's figure out exactly how to do that.
So how do we make abstract science actually matter? I mean, if you spent literally any time in a classroom, you've heard it, right? The classic, why do I even need to learn this? It is the brick wall every science teacher faces when introducing complex, seemingly invisible concepts. If a student can't see how a chemical reaction or a physical force applies to their actual, everyday life, their engagement just completely drops to zero. Well, that is the exact problem this competency solves.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. First up, bridging the science gap. Second, cultivating informed decision makers. Third, effective teaching strategies. And finally, conquering the 94 exam. Let's jump right in.
Part 1. Bridging the science gap. We're looking at the what here.
So the core of Competency 005C is all about taking that sterile, super-controlled environment of the classroom lab and blasting the doors open to the dynamic outside world. It specifically calls for using situations from students' daily lives to develop instructional materials that investigate informed decision-making. Basically, instruction shouldn't just start in a vacuum. The starting line really needs to be a familiar phenomenon.
Think about it like this. On one side, you've got abstract concepts. Traditional, rote memorization straight from a textbook. Dry, right? But on the flip side, you have contextualized learning. Instead of just memorizing facts, what if you're understanding the actual science behind your daily nutrition? When you make that pivot, student engagement literally skyrockets. Connecting science to their own experiences helps them see it as this powerful tool for understanding their world, rather than, just another subject they have to pass. Just take a look at these examples straight from the source. Nutrition choices, weather preparation, personal health and fitness. These are not just chapters in a book. They are everyday realities for our students. Like, if you design a lesson around the meteorology of prepping for severe storms, suddenly science isn't just an academic requirement anymore. It's literally a practical survival tool.
All right, moving on to Part 2. Cultivating informed decision makers. Let's talk about the why.
Because let's be honest, we're aiming for a lot more than just keeping students awake during second period. Our ultimate goal here is to teach students to use scientific evidence to make rational choices. It's about actively training up the next generation to actually look at data, evaluate the evidence in front of them, and then apply that knowledge to their real day-to-day lives.
And this creates such a fascinating ripple effect. It always starts with the personal decisions, right? Like a student learning how specific exercises improve their own physical fitness, or understanding exactly how vaccines protect their body. But we can't stop there. Instruction has to connect the dots on how these personal choices scale way up into major societal outcomes. So an individual's conservation effort directly impacts massive global natural resource management. It's huge when you think about it.
Which brings us to Part 3, effective teaching strategies. This is the how. Now that we've nailed down the why, let's open up the practical playbook. A truly effective science teacher operates sort of like a museum curator. You aren't just blindly handing out a standardized curriculum. You are constantly identifying your students' prior knowledge, figuring out their developmental levels, and selectively curating the exact daily life scenarios that are going to perfectly hook their unique interests. But curation is really just step one. You've got to carefully scaffold the scientific terminology and literacy so those students can actually defend their decisions. I mean, you could bring in the most mind-blowing real-world problem ever, but if your students don't have the vocabulary to discuss and defend their choices, well, the whole lesson just kind of falls apart. They need the language to express their informed decisions.
And this approach ties absolutely perfectly into modern educational frameworks, like the 2024 Tex engineering practices. We are seeing a massive shift toward active engineering, where students are defining real-world problems based on phenomenon right outside their window, and then actively designing scientific solutions. It is hands-on inquiry at its absolute best.
When they design these solutions, the level of critical thinking is just, wow, it runs so deep. They aren't just circling C on a multiple-choice test. They have to rigorously evaluate the advantages, like, say, a positive environmental impact. Then they have to weigh the disadvantages, maybe the economic cost to the local community. And finally, they have to research alternative courses of action. That is a serious, high-level life skill we are imparting here.
All right, last but not least, Part 4, conquering the 904 exam. This is the win.
For everyone out there actively grinding towards certification, let's translate all of this into a concrete test prep strategy. When you're sitting in that testing center, keep your eyes peeled for scenarios where a teacher brings a local news story, a common household item, or some kind of personal health concern straight into the lab. When you see those daily life cues, that is a massive, flashing neon sign that Competency 005C is being evaluated.
So, when you spot that flashing sign, here is your ultimate exam playbook. First step, the teacher brings in a real-world scenario. Second step, the students collect data and evidence. And third step, the students justify a logical decision. I promise you, the correct multiple-choice option will almost always mirror that exact three-step sequence. Just lock that progression into your brain, and you are going to navigate those tricky scenario questions with total ease. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on today. How are you going to bridge the gap in your own classroom? Seriously, look around. What local news stories, community challenges, or just quirky daily experiences are sitting there, just waiting to be transformed into an incredible science lesson? Take these concepts off the screen and bring them into your future labs. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.